I work at OpenAI. I live and breathe this, and I am not on top of AI. There are a lot of things that I keep learning every day, and it's okay. It's fine. AI was an instant phenomenon at a scale that has been never seen before. How is it possible that this was such a fast adoption and that yet we are seeing so much friction in organizations?
Welcome to Supercompanies, my quest to understand how the smartest and the most valuable companies in the world are going to be built in the age of AI. I'm your host, Greg Shove, 7-time founder and CEO of Section AI. This week, we're talking with Brice Challamel. I'm a longtime admirer of Brice's work, both at Moderna, where he was head of AI, and now at OpenAI, where he leads a team supporting OpenAI's large enterprise customers and their deployments of ChatGPT Enterprise. Brice is a change management guru. He was at BCG. I think he wrote a book about change management, and then he worked at Google for a number of years, enabling their clients and their transformations. Brice has always been generous with his time, and when I can get it, I take it, because I always learn a lot. He's a humanist when it comes to AI, and he reminds me that AI transformations are serious business, but they can also be fun for employees to learn how to expand their capabilities and change the way they work. So let's get into this with Brice. First of all, Brice, where are you today?
Hey, I am in Cambridge at my home today. This is because I was very privileged and honored to join Moderna 5 years ago and to work as the head of AI for Moderna for the past 3 years. And it's headquartered in Cambridge near Boston. And I am about to relocate to Berkeley because I'm joining OpenAI. In a couple of weeks, I'll be relocating.
You have joined OpenAI.
I started on the 6th of January.
Lots going on, which we'll talk about. Let me tell you my hypothesis and have you agree or disagree. Because if you disagree, it'll be a short conversation. After 10 minutes, we'll be done.
You're not giving me a lot of choice there.
No, it's fine. But if you agree, then we could keep talking. Brice, first of all, this podcast is called Supercompanies, as is my new newsletter. And because I believe we're entering the era of supercompanies, and I believe supercompanies will be the most valuable companies in the world in 10 or 20 years. So supercompanies, Brice, we don't know who they are yet in terms of ultimately who will become a supercompany. Because I believe you have to deliver earnings, not just revenue, but earnings, and over many years, not just a quarter here and there. Companies like Google or Amazon and Netflix as super companies today, they've done this over a 20-year period or longer, and it took probably 10 years until they really could start delivering the kind of earnings and results that investors would consider a super company class. So my perspective today, Brice, is we're looking at potential super companies today, and we'll know more in 10 years, maybe sooner, because it does feel like timeframes are compressed these days. It's clear to me, at least, that Anthropic and OpenAI are the first two candidates for large-scale super companies, particularly OpenAI the last few years. They basically operate with AI and they create better products and services with AI. If they do that well over time at scale, they have a chance to be a super company. And that's what we're talking about. Do you agree with my basic hypothesis?
I agree, and I want to add to it.
Okay.
2 things. The first is that we're also going to have super schools and super governments and super hospitals, that we're actually going to have super organizations, and that companies are a component of those. But the togetherness of humans to give themselves the means to accomplish something important for society expresses itself in a huge diversity of ways. And I think all of those different organizations are going to leave a profound transformation. And the second thing I want to augment in what you just said is that I do hope that OpenAI and Anthropic will be among the super organizations that we just described. I will say, however, from the perspective of working at OpenAI and being part of the leadership team and caring so much, that our goal is not just to be a super company. It is to create millions of other super companies. It is to be the enablers of those super organizations and at the most global possible scale, not just among the privileged parts of society or of developed countries and so on, a true mankind improvement.
Not just Silicon Valley VC-backed startups.
It's so easy to corner those companies into a bubble And sometimes in those companies can behave within a culture bubble. The AI models themselves are very oriented towards the Western world because they feed on the Western knowledge. We have a lot of progress to make, but this needs to be beneficial to the whole of mankind. It cannot just be beneficial to a part of mankind.
So I want to spend a little bit more time on super companies or super organizations as you describe them. So I would suggest that they can be of any size. I'm not implying that super companies have to be big necessarily, that a 5-person company that is self-funded can be a super company or a super organization or a 100-person school. It's not about scale necessarily. I think it's about the way they operate in terms of delivering so much value to their customers, using intelligence, using AI, and perhaps more efficiently than has been traditionally possible. I think we'll see super law firms in a few years behaving differently on the inside and supporting their customers in different ways with different business models and different service models, perhaps, than existing law firms today. My take on this, Brice, I'd be curious if you agree, is that if you look at every category, there are 10 winners, let's say the top 10. In 10 years, 5 are the same. They've transformed. 5 have exited. They're no longer in the top 10. They couldn't transform fast enough. And 5 are new. And I'm not sure that's the right number exactly. We are going to get a reordering to some extent of the winners in these categories. Any reaction to that?
I think of it in the terms of encyclopedias and Nintendo. So let me explain. Encyclopedias are a field of the knowledge societies that is constantly in rotation. You had a series of companies like Encyclopedia Britannica, Universalis that lived in the era of books. And then they went out of business mostly when we had CD-ROMs. And at that point, we had a new breed of companies to the effect of Encarta that came to life and became the hallmark of knowledge sharing. And then we moved towards a more software SaaS-driven era with the wikis, and suddenly it became Wikipedia, and Encarta just went out of business. And today, Wikipedia is probably sunsetting towards OpenAI's ChatGPT, towards Google's Gemini, towards Anthropic's Claude, and so on, which is the place where you would most naturally come and find knowledge. And I don't know yet how that is going to go, but certainly there's a new change of era, which is also a change of player. So that's encyclopedias, right? 5 revolutions in less than 30 years, 5 different sets of companies. And then you have Nintendo. This is a company that was created in the 19th century to create hand-illustrated Japanese playing cards. And from there evolved to do liquid crystal games in the era of electronics, right? They were born in the age of printing. And in the age of electronics, they made Donkey Kong. And then they made the Wiimote and the console era. And then the age of mobile phone and SaaS came and they did Pokemon Go, which became a juggernaut of entertainment and playfulness in the same type of technology moment as Wikipedia. And now you see the full collection of the characters of Nintendo feeding the capabilities of recursive playfulness with open-ended games. And the brand goes on to live from one platform to the next, but Nintendo is still doing amazingly well in the age of AI. And it is the same player through the same 5 technology eras. And I think the reason is that the encyclopedias are always focused on how. They are book companies and then CRM companies and then wiki companies. Whereas Nintendo is always a why company. Mm-hmm. It's about making people play. And if it's with cards, perfect. If it's with liquid crystal screens, perfect. If it's with video game consoles and movement detection, fantastic. If it's with AI, even better. And we are going to keep seeing the ever-evolving fracture of organizations with a purpose, with a why, that embrace any new way to deliver their mission statement versus organizations with a how that are born out of a specific way of doing things and will live and die with that specific way of doing things. But of course, for the people who work there, for the people who own those companies, and for all the assets they've created, it's a dramatic upheaval. And I think that now is the time for every leader, every decision maker, every entrepreneur who's listening to us to pause and ask themselves, what am I trying to achieve? And what is the next new way to achieve this so that I'm more and more Nintendo and less encyclopedia?
So just to put a fine point on this, and I think this is how the whole conversation is going to go. You're going to zoom out and I'm going to zoom in. That'll be a good compliment. So it sounds like you're saying that's the very first question or analysis to make. Does this company culturally live and operate as a how company or a why company?
That's exactly right. But it's like, how likely is this company to be constantly focused on why? Because I don't want to presume that a company that has been focused on how for a while cannot migrate. I want to believe that we have a choice there and that this is why we're having this conversation, because our listeners have a choice and I want them to exercise their freedom. And you can't do this if you don't know your options.
So as an investor, let's say in the public markets, I might be looking around, looking for companies that today live and operate as a Y company. It's a requirement to begin the transformation.
How companies see everything as a threat to how. We'll take the archetypal example of Kodak. They saw digital photography as a threat to the how of silver nitrate. And if you would look at the leadership of Kodak at the time, they would constantly highlight the profound and, in their mind, long-lasting fallacies and deficiencies of digital photography, even though a lot of it was patented by Kodak themselves, but in a defensive move to protect the moat of silver nitrate technology. The ones who see opportunities, who want to explore the opportunity that are offered with technology. And that's something that is always a hallmark of Y companies.
So let's talk about first those who have to transform. And then I want to talk about those who are building AI natively from the ground up. Let's go back to your 3 years where you headed AI at Moderna and that transformation. Could you share, Brice, the top 2 or 3 or more lessons from that transformation?
One of the things that we learned is the importance of the human system that supports change. I would put it in 5 components. One component is executive sponsors. The fact that the leadership team sees the opportunity, embraces it, and guides the company towards it. Because without that support, change is hard. And if you add friction to change, suddenly you put the stakes much higher. The second component I would call integrators. They are people who are in charge of a specific achievement within an organization, and that achievement has to be redefined with AI. So let's say you are in retail, it can be merchandising. Let's say you're in pharma, it can be clinical trials. Let's say you're in entertainment, it can be reach an audience. Let's say you are in financial services, it can be wealth management. There are subcomponents of organizations that make the entire surface work. And each of those components, on top of the whole culture of the organization, has to be redefined and has to be at least explored. And the people in charge of them have to ask themselves, what is the future of clinical trials, of wealth management, of merchandising?
Just so I understand, so integrators are people or teams, Brice?
For me, they are first and foremost people, because I want to talk about the human system of change. Just to state here something that I think is very obvious. You can't ask the CEO of a large retailer to spend their days and nights thinking about the future of merchandising with AI, because they have a broader scope to take care of. But you can't ask either someone who's filling the shelves to think about the future of merchandising with AI, because they're filling the shelves and they don't have the signals or the cloud to carry this on. So there has to be someone who's accountable for what is the future of merchandising in a world that is driven by AI. And that person is probably to the effect of a senior director or a vice president who has enough cloud but is still close to the job and is in charge of merchandising.
So what you're saying is it's the function they lead or the team they lead really is at the core of the business, and figuring out how to change that, improve it, transform it with AI. That's the opportunity. And this individual, senior enough to have clout, not too senior to be head in the clouds, so to speak. This is the person we're looking for, the integrator.
Doesn't mean they have to work alone, but that's exactly right. And what this prevents is to improve to the edge of perfection, something we should have stopped doing because it's no longer necessary in the age of AI, right? Like the role of integrators is to move to the next platform instead of improving endlessly the current one. So the third one is the activators. If you remember the days of the beginning of Excel spreadsheets, everyone was wondering how to do pivot tables. But there were a few people who knew how to do a pivot table in Excel spreadsheet in the 90s. And you were very lucky if your desk was close to their desk. And this is an eternal story, right? Of people who embrace the technology, who are a little bit more advanced, are explorative with it, are curious with it, and you can turn to when you need to do a little bit better than just scratching the surface. And those are very important. They should be to the effect of 1 out of 10 in every organization. You should be able to turn around and find them just in your line of sight. And those are the activators. They activate your ability to take the full benefit and the full value of a new technology. The fourth component is users. And I don't want to let users outside of the human system of change, because every single user is in charge of their own change. The same way that you're in charge of learning how to type, and you're going from 2 fingers to 10 fingers, which is a bit slower at the first. But then when you get the hang of it, you get much faster. And this is on you as a user. No one is going to type for you. And so at that point, we have 4 layers of the system of change, which are the sponsors, the integrators, the activators, and the users. And now you need a form of orchestration. These 4 components have to work in good motion, have to connect efficiently, have to receive the right signals. And it is useful, even if you have amazing players at every one of those departments, to have an orchestrator that looks at the entire surface of change and has an accountability to it. It might be a temporary role. I don't know that it's going to last forever, but in the current day and age, it's useful to have orchestrators of AI adoption, and those are usually the heads of AI.
What happened to AI champions? I thought we all needed and wanted those guys. What happened to champions?
Here's what happened. I found that when you talk about champions, some people think, oh, I'm not a champion, I'm off the hook. And that suddenly you have jeopardized the whole movement. Sponsors are champions. Integrators are champions. Activators are champions. Users are champions. And orchestrators are champions. Every single person in a super organization, because that's our topic here, has to be a champion of AI.
You didn't talk about builders. So is all this living alongside another team that is building with AI?
So I love the question. I think that we have moved from the AI that you can speak with to the AI that you can work with. And that AI that you can work with builds a lot of things. It builds assets, it builds code, it builds expertise, it builds memory. And more, I think, is going to build externalization of mental models. Like all those skills that didn't live on a hard drive, but in people's minds, are going to increasingly be part of the construct of the company through AI. And we're going to have to do that migration in the coming years. In this way, I think the super companies will be 100% made of builders. That for now, it's still hard to completely comprehend and accept that there's a lot of organizations which have legitimate concerns about how that is going to go, and that are going at this very cautiously, which I fully respect and understand. But I don't see how we will not be ending with 100% builders.
So let's do some reality checks right now. We have 150 enterprise customers at Section who are deploying our software to support their adoption programs. I would say it's happening slower than the CEOs would expect or want. But are we just being impatient? Is the pace we're moving to be expected? Is the resistance we're getting to be expected? And is the concerns around security and wiring up the company's data to these systems, to the AI systems, is this just normal and we just need to chill out and let this happen over some number of years? Or are there some things we can do differently to accelerate these changes?
First, yes, this is very much a May 2026 topic. It wasn't there a year ago, and it won't be there a year from now. For the simple reason that a year ago, we didn't really talk about agents. And within a year, everyone will be juggling agents as they are now juggling slides or spreadsheets as an atomic unit of work, right?
I built my first one yesterday.
Congratulations. How hard did you find it?
It was pretty easy. If you'd asked me a few months ago, Greg, will you personally build 100 agents? I'd be like, no way. Maybe 2 or 3. Like I have an AI chief of staff agent, which I love. 100 seems like a big number, but maybe not, right? In terms of my own, whatever we call them, portfolio of agents.
My first word is team, right? You're going to have a team of agents. And in this, you're going to be a team manager. And management is not easy. Everyone who has a manager job knows that it can be tricky and difficult. We need to get better at it as a society, but you will onboard agents, you will train agents, you will evaluate agents, you will sometimes repurpose agents, you will organize them, orchestrate them, you will put some agents in charge of others. You're going to do a lot of management, and so am I. And the notion that I wanted to highlight here, I'm so grateful that you've already given it a try, is that this is way easier than we ever thought it would be. If 6 months ago it was almost impossible, and in 6 months it'll be an afterthought.
I get it, but that's for you and I. Let's go back to this ambitious integrator, this ambitious activator inside of a large organization.
There's something that you mentioned at first, and I wanted to surface, but we didn't have a chance. When you said the difficulty of change and adoption, and this was like at the very beginning of our conversation, this is the fastest technology adoption we've ever seen in the history of mankind. Within months of the launch of GPT-4 and of ChatGPT a few months later, you had hundreds of millions of users. We now have billions of AI users. The other day, I was sitting in a restaurant and then suddenly I paused because I wanted to just capture that moment. I was surrounded by 5 tables and each and every one of the 5 tables was talking about AI, right? It was a stunning realization. And it was no doom and gloom conversation. They were actually marveling about AI for the 5 of them in 5 different shapes and forms. And as much as we like to question the future, understand the risks, acknowledge the limitations when this is our daily job, the billion people who are using ChatGPT right now, most of them have found some profound usefulness to it, and it is making their lives better. And they've adopted this in such a short span of time that we have to pause and consider what it means, because it took a decade to absorb mobile phones. And those are not hard objects. They are meant to be very intuitive and user-friendly. And yet, it took about a decade from 2005 to 2015 for mobile phones to reach a majority of the population. But AI was an instant phenomenon at a scale that has been never seen before. How is it possible that this was such a fast adoption and that we have billions of users of AI in society, and that yet we are seeing so much friction in organizations? This is the mystery at hand here.
Okay, so what's the answer? This is why you're my guest. I'm just the host, Brice. You got to do the work. I'm just the setup guy.
Well, we are going to discuss
but let's get right to the heart of the question. I think when AI hits or lands or arrives in the organization, I think it comes with primarily the perception of risk to the worker. Certainly with change as a minimum, right? I'll have to change what I do and how I do it.
I want to go back to first principles of change management. Every new thing can be perceived as a threat or an opportunity. When you see a new movie or when you read a new book, you don't feel threatened, do you? So it's not about change, right? There's something else there. Because most change is actually enjoyable. Actually, human people dread one thing, is the absence of change. If I tell you right now that the day you just had is going to be the same day forever for the rest of your life.
Yeah, no Groundhog Day. I agree. Okay.
No Groundhog Day. So we, the humans, love change. What makes change enjoyable is 3 things. The first one is togetherness, that we do it together. The second one is that we get a voice in change, that we are part of change, that change is not imposed upon us, but that we are constantly a component of the motion of change with our will and with our decisions and our taste and our appreciation. And the third one is that it goes in a progressive way, that it goes one step after the other. If you strip any of those 3 points, you're going to start having uncomfortable change. If you strip 2 out of 3, it's going to be painful change. If you strip the 3 out of 3, it's going to be hurtful change. And so the core question here is that when people get in their personal lives to discuss at every table of a restaurant about AI, they are doing this together. This is togetherness. They're sharing experiments with each other and they're making progress. And they have agency. They have choice. They can decide with which brand they're going to go. Are they going to go Gemini? Are they going to go Claude? Are they going to go ChatGPT?
Which use cases do you use AI for?
Exactly right. What is important for them? So they get to explore in the way that humans were meant to explore change, which is together with a voice and step by step. And now we have to ask ourselves, how are those 3 conditions met in the enterprise world? You and I, we have seen a lot of pilot projects. This is not togetherness. It's like a part of you is going to get it and a part of you is not going to get it. Mm-hmm. And let's all watch from the sidelines the part of you that just got it and how they fare with it. It's stressful for those who don't have it because suddenly they're deprived of something. And it's stressful for the ones who have it because suddenly they are in charge of demonstrating that it's useful. And if they fail, then why are they failing when the rest of the world seems to be succeeding with it? When we started AI adoption in Moderna, we started with everyone that has an identity in the company. Everyone that had an email address in Moderna had access to MChat.
I talk about this, Brice. If you had 2 kids, you wouldn't give one kid AI and one kid not AI if you wanted them to succeed.
And your wife, and your mother, and your father, because you want the whole family
to benefit
and to discuss it, to make sense of it, to rally around it, or to decide that it's not for them. It's fine, but at least this is a family conversation. So that's the first point, right? The togetherness point. The second one is like your voice in this, your agency. We are not seeing a lot of companies that make room for experiments and playfulness. Another famous part of what we did at Moderna, which is always the topic of a lot of talks because there's a Harvard business case on this, there was CatGPT, which was a GPT we made to turn a picture of you into a cat face. And this was for a while the most used GPT of the company. Now, everyone makes fun of this in the case, and as they should, it was meant to tease them a little bit, bait them a little bit in this. But pretty soon you understand that this was a rallying cry. This was people being playful with the technology, with the very first generation of image generation with AI, and then using that cat face as their new face on social platforms internal to the company to make a statement that they were part of that movement. And in this way, it was very useful. But I find that a lot of companies, when I listen to them, the first thing they say is, where's the value? How fast can we get to the better return on investment? Maybe I can make this more automated. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but the speed at which they get there, when we are still learning, is pretty uncanny. And I don't know that it's conducive to pleasant change. Because if you're under that kind of pressure, you don't have the time to play around with the technology. Playfulness is a universal component of adaptable life. You see the puppies and the kitten, they also are very playful. This is not just the humans. It's every animal species that has adaptability, has playfulness. And this is meant by nature to give us a chance to explore novelty. So that's the second component, right? We need to create the conditions for exploration, and those often go hand in hand with the conditions for playfulness. And so it has to be sandboxed, it has to be secure, it has to be accounted for, it has to be promoted by the leadership. And without this, you're going to be in a world of hurt in your change management process. And then the last part was the progressive part. We have to acknowledge that the pace is very fast here. And so if you want to be progressive, you have to be constant because you have to make a step every day, right? So there's something to the effect of daily usage that makes AI a surface you can comprehend and evolve with. But if you have weekly usage or monthly usage, you're constantly going to feel that you're overwhelmed by the pace of change. And it's going to be increasingly there because we're not going to go back to slower times and slower technology deployment. We need to be in daily contact with the new technologies that come to our lives in order to make them an organic part of how we live. The same way that anyone who knows how to drive a car for a few years has an organic understanding of how to drive a car and then can talk in the car, can whistle, can listen to a podcast. It's fine because they have internalized driving a car. And that's because they are taking their car every day. There was never the need for such profound transformation in such a compressed time frame. And so I hope that every manager and leader that listens to this pauses and reflects on how they have been handling important change in compressed timelines and what it takes to do this right, because it is not rocket science, but you have to be thoughtful and intentional about it.
I'm going to summarize. Remove the fear and accelerate or increase the playfulness or the fun.
The fear is the outcome
of the lack of the others.
Yes. The fear is the outcome of the lack of any of the three things I've just said. If you're doing this by yourself, you have a reason to be afraid. If you have no voice in change, zero agency, and it's imposed upon you, you have every reason to be afraid. And if it just falls on you like a meteor landing in your garden without any notion of awareness and warning, and it's 0 to 1 overnight, you have every reason to be afraid. The fear is the outcome of poor change management. People don't feel fear in their daily lives when they're approaching those new technologies and making sense of them with their friends or their family.
Yeah. And I would also say, Brice, the media doesn't help and certain CEOs don't help, meaning the narrative that AI is coming for our jobs. And of course, we have CEOs who are doing layoffs and blaming AI for their layoffs. It just adds fuel to the fire in terms of this anxiety, right?
It adds fuel to the fire and it's upsetting. And I profoundly doubt that is going to happen. First, historically, there's no precedent. It's never happened that an automation technology would result in less employment. Never. And it's not like the first wave. We've had 500 years of this straight, since the very beginning of the industrial era and the weaving machines. Second, it's contrary to my experience at Moderna. People, if anything, had more work, not less, because they had more options and they had more things they could suddenly accomplish. And they had to make choices among all the things they could do of what they were going to focus on. And lastly, it baffles common sense. How is it possible that there's less work, let's say, for software engineers when everyone is crying out for code? How is it possible that there's less work for legal experts when everyone now has the potential to write a perfectly well-framed letter with AI to claim their rights and to send it to a company or to a person that has wronged them? Like all those domains that we keep giving as examples of domains that are going to be sacrificed to AI are under an explosion of need. And when you look at the trending statistics of employment right now, as I speak, they're not going downward. We are not seeing massive unemployment yet, and yet we are in the third year of propagation of AI. So there will be some change in the surface of work. And there is a risk to maybe under-index the capabilities of junior workers and try to hire directly senior workers without understanding that the junior workers come with a whole new mindset and a whole new capability with AI that is currently not fully accounted for by company leaders. So there might be a little bit of pain and adjustment there. And I'm not saying it's going to be a smooth and perfect transition.
You're referring, I think, Brice, to some of the research and data that shows that some roles that are exposed to AI, junior level hiring seems to have been impacted. That was the study, I think, last summer out of Stanford. And I tend to share your opinion, which is young people plus AI are the best to hire. I want more of them, not less. And this idea of skipping a whole layer or two of experience and only hiring more experienced people, I'm not buying that. I also think in general, the best humans are going to get more valuable. I see at Section, our own company, we're only 50 people, we're tiny. Everyone is more valuable. And I can see our most augmented employees really excited about what they're able to accomplish. And at the end of the week, exhausted.
A good friend of ours, Eric Porres, and hi Eric, if you're listening to this, who's the head of AI at Logitech, called this the vampire mode. These people that spend so much time at night exploring AI, not being able to go to sleep because they want to try one more thing, then they start to look like vampires when they come to the office during the day. And I find it funny and scary and thought-provoking at the same time because he really has a point. A lot of people are in vampire mode. They are so excited and hyped by AI that they are losing sleep over it. It will pass, but here we are.
I have sympathy for them, Brice, those who are in the larger companies, because I think they feel, frankly, more on their own and a little isolated because they are those early adopters and the rest of the org does not seem to be catching up as quickly.
Those large companies, I would invite to think very carefully about their policy to keep those people aboard, because why would they stay? This is a very important moment and a turning point. People who have been in vampire mode for a few months, or just people who have been embracing AI and who are starting to become, as you rightfully expressed, more efficient, more inspired, more coachable, because they are constantly under mentoring from AI. Those people are more and more precious, and companies need to have a policy to host them and make them part of the human system of change that we've described together.
Brice, we've noticed at Section in the last 6 months, a significant increase in the quality and seniority of those candidates applying for even our entry-level roles. And what they're telling us is they realize they can't transform themselves as fast as they would like in their existing org, and they're willing to trade maybe level and title and maybe even comp in order to work at a place, our place. I'm sure OpenAI and Anthropic and other companies are the same, where they know they're going to be dropped into really an AI native environment.
And it was also the case with Moderna, by the way. The onboarding sessions at Moderna, one of the first things you would hear is, welcome to Moderna, a place where you have the chance to live fully empowered with AI. And everyone would just burst in cheers and applaud. You could see how the glimmer in the eyes of everyone, because of course, probably the biggest fear and anxiety nowadays is for people to land in a company that deprive them of the capability to leverage AI to be their best selves.
Let's talk about your role at OpenAI, Brice. You've been there a few months, as you said. I'm sure it's been a wild ride already in terms of the pace of change and the capabilities. What are you doing there?
My role is to support every program and every initiative that contributes to faster, better, smarter adoption. Right? How do we strategize the way that AI becomes a component of the surface of work? In this, I could state it to the simplicity of how can I make 1,000 Modernas or 1,000,000 Modernas, which is very close to your opening statement. How do we promote and pave the way towards super organizations? It's a daunting task because the time is so compressed and the need is so wide. They can be CEOs of companies. They can be deans of academic institutions. They can be heads of hospitals. They can be senior officials of government agencies. We have the whole gamut of those people coming to us right now and expressing the need for clarity and guidance and support. And I think in this way, OpenAI has very rapidly evolved through 3 consecutive motions. It brought technology because OpenAI is a research company first and foremost. And then it brought enterprise and organization capability, which is the full platform to operate that technology. And now it's bringing a transformative component that is going to accelerate the Darwinian evolution of all those organizations. When I joined Google 10 years ago, it was already a company of 125,000 people. When I joined OpenAI in January, it was less than 5,000. And so even though it is growing, this is by any standard, when you think about the impact that this organization has had in the world, a very small team, a very small organization. And so there is just not the surface there to treat directly every leader or every customer interested in how to transform with the technology. And this is where companies like yours play a huge role, because OpenAI is not going to be able to jump in to treat every single request. But what we do mean to do is to have a voice and to share best practices. This is completely part of my role to be here speaking with you and sharing those best practices and giving mental models and frameworks. Those frameworks are the outcome of hundreds and hundreds of experiences that either I've been a part of or I've witnessed or I've discovered through interviews. You're also a very well-versed practitioner, so you know the questions to ask me. And what we're doing here is of the essence because time is of the essence. And we can't just let the ecosystem figure out things out of its natural motion over the span of years.
So, Brice, I saw this quote from Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, around how he had his moment building his own agent. I'm beginning to hear more of this, and we're seeing more of it ourselves, meaning when we get this C-suite really to experience the power of these capabilities, build their first GPT agent beyond just chatting with ChatGPT, the light bulb goes on for them, and I think in a more meaningful way. And you talked about the 5 components of success. One, of course, is executive sponsorship. And I think at that moment creates a different kind of executive sponsorship, which is not around either hype or I'm going to use AI to be more efficient and lay people off in the call center, but really a realization and alignment around the power of these capabilities. And if the CEO can feel it or the C-suite can feel it, they'll realize that this could be available to everyone.
That's exactly right. We're seeing the exact same thing. It's not specific to CEOs, by the way. Anyone who puts their hands on the technology and who puts their minds on this and gives it a try is really surprised. And the most detrimental people on this topic are often people who haven't given it a shot. You don't need to fall in love with AI, but certainly you shouldn't be estranged to it in the current day and age. You asked me a few minutes ago what my job looks like now at OpenAI. For now, 80% of my job is to meet C-level executives of large organizations and combine thought leadership and hands-on experiments with them. I don't do any of them without the other anymore. I very much fear loose experiments with no framing, just as much as I fear abstract conversations on AI without being in touch with it. And even simple things like leveraging ChatGPT, uploading a skill into ChatGPT and seeing the difference before and after the skill is uploaded, and then turning that outcome into an application, sharing it with others. It's like 15 or 20 minutes, the whole thing. And even doing this is already a chance for any executive leader to understand, I can upskill AI. AI can have memories of our interactions. AI can turn this into code. Code surfaces my way of thinking. And then I can play with my own thought patterns, with my own mental model. I can toggle off an assumption. I can express scenarios based on the hypotheses that I retain or don't retain. All this in a single page application. And this whole experiment, including the conversation about it, is the topic of half an hour. We have not exhausted the capabilities of AI, but we have definitely given a glimpse of the world to come.
So my request, Brice, is that you and OpenAI share more around how you guys are operating inside. Because I think what is not clear to most organizations is how radical it will be to operate a company that is really fueled by this intelligence.
I couldn't agree more. I'm thankful for you for doing it too. The world needs you, Greg, and you're doing it in an amazing way. You've been such a fantastic proponent of sharing more and giving a chance and opportunity for people who are a little bit ahead of the curve to share. And I'm constantly following you on your publications, the online seminars that you organize. I am not on top of AI. I work at OpenAI. I live and breathe this, and I am not on top of AI. There are a lot of things that I keep learning every day and that have been happening for weeks or months, and it's okay. It's fine. Not even our best engineers, not even our CEO is entirely on top of AI, right? This is a huge platform with a lot of surface and potential. Everyone is exploring it in different ways and shapes and forms. And if you're listening to this and you think, this new thing that they just talked about, the skills, the agents, I haven't made one, I'm not on top of it. Breathe and be well, because you're not the only one and because it's going to be completely fine. Like when the time comes, you will experiment with it. When the time comes, we will make it simple for you to embrace it. We need to digest this and process this at the pace that feels right for everyone. And you and I, Greg, we need to give the signals at the pace that keeps everyone informed without overwhelming. And that's a fine line to walk.
I'm going to wrap up, Brice, with a couple thoughts. First, if you're a CEO or any leader and you've just signed a $5 million contract with Accenture to manage your AI transformation, stop doing that and build a CatGPT. That's my first takeaway. That's all you need. You need a CatGPT. Make it fun and breathe. I love that advice, Brice. All in good time. Having said that, get on with it is my advice as well, which is if you've got AI native organizations coming into your category, I think the clock is ticking a little bit. You would say breathe and relax. And I agree with you. I'd also say as a leader, be clear about what needs to happen for your own organization in the next 10 years. Become super. Brice, as always, thanks for joining. Great to chat with you. And hopefully we can do it again sometime later this year.
Thanks for having me, and I'm already looking forward to it.
Listen, there is no playbook to build a super company, but Brice has given us some great lessons we can all use. In terms of thinking high meaning, what is the why of your organization or team? And if you understand that and the value proposition you're meant to deliver for your customers, you'll probably find it easier to integrate AI into those products or services as a source of leverage, not as a source of disruption. How organizations or teams get stuck in the way they work and will likely view AI more as of a disruption rather than a source of leverage. I also liked Brice's advice about going low, meaning going tactical, doing the small things that can accelerate these changes or transformations, making AI fun, making AI not solo, but a group journey for a small team. Change is easier when you're not doing it alone. And Brice just had some great advice here in terms of kickstarting your AI transformations. These are good lessons we'll add to the super company playbook as we all try to build our own version of a super company in the coming year. Thank you for listening to Super Companies. What questions or challenges are you facing with AI these days? Drop a comment or email podcast@sectionai.com. Until our next episode, you can find me online at supercompanies.ai, where you can sign up for my newsletter, also called Super Companies. We also have a link to Brice's great newsletter, The Power of Why, in the show notes as well. If you've got a second, please leave a rating or review. It'll help others find the show.